Hi, everybody. Right, making the mold continued. We are now going to make the front segment. Just a note also, what you're going to see now is um, based on my experience in experimenting with fiberglassing. And I think I've come up with the easiest way to fiberglass. It is my way, which maybe you don't necessarily agree with, but I will try and explain the process as we go through it. And please, if you disagree, let me have your comments, etc. Thank you very much. The first process is to make the section ready. We do this by first of all applying putty to all of the gaps, making sure that there are no gaps where the resin can go through. And it's extremely important at this stage that we finish off these gaps really well. It will define the finished product. So it's essential that the corners are finished off so that they look perfect. You can also see that I've covered the one side in plastic. That's just an option to use to ensure that the resin doesn't stick to that side of that segment. But you don't really need to, because you can just use wax and release agent. So what I'm doing here is I'm just making sure that I am filling in all of the gaps, making the mold perfect. And I'm using putty with a putty knife to finish off the, to, to make sure that the corners are are perfect. It's important to take your time when you do this, because, as I say, it's going to define or determine how well the mold comes out in the end. We're looking for crisp, clean edges to the mold where it meets the other segments. Yeah, it's just focused and zoomed in view of making sure that the edges are perfect. Next, I am marking out where I want to drill the holes for the bolts that will connect, secure the segments together. So I'm just drilling out the holes here. I'm using M8 uh, nuts and bolts. What I'm doing here is I'm just drilling the other side of the holes a bit larger and putting threaded inserts into those holes, because it then makes it much easier to bolt the sections together. I don't have to use loose nuts. I can just basically screw the bolts into the threaded holes. What I'm doing here is now I'm taking some washers and I'm going to cut out sections out of these washers, and then I'm going to use these washers as a way to register the holes to make sure that over time the holes don't deteriorate and the sections of the mold start to move. So what I'm going to do now is I've just bolted that together, and I take it to my angle grinder and I just now cut some grooves in those washers. Those grooves will then prevent the washer from moving once I put it, put layers of fiberglass over it. It will prevent the washer from moving, from turning, and that will ensure that the washer stays put and creates a perfect way to register the two sections together. Because you will have noticed I'm not using any sort of registration keys here. The registration key is basically just an indentation or extrusion that you use between two components of the mold that allows you to make sure that the mold's sections align perfectly. But the problem with that is that it's difficult to take apart, especially this type of mold. What I'm doing here now is I'm using small pieces of fabric. Decided it was going to be the best way to make the section of the mold, and I'm just calculating how many pieces I'm going to need. I'm aiming to do 4 layers of the fabric. So here I'm just kind of positioning them loosely and trying to figure out how many pieces I need. It's very important that you make sure that you have enough fabric pre-cut before you start the fiberglassing process, because you won't have time to go and cut fiberglass. After figuring out how many sections of fabric I need, I've started now cutting up pieces, and I'm using 2 types of fabric here. I'm using a thin fabric, a twill weave, which is this one here that you see, which is 163 grams per square meter. It's very light, but it's fantastic because it conforms perfectly to any type of contour. Very, very easy to, and it's a very good first layer to put on any mold above a gel coat. So here I'm just cutting them out into small squares. What I'm doing here now is that just shows you the twill weave remains pretty constant when you stretch it in all directions. And what I'm doing here is I'm just cutting a little hole in it, because I'm going to insert these or place these over the bolts, you'll see later, to make sure that the bolt section of the mold remains very strong. I'm now changing over to cut a much thicker fabric. This time it's a 600 gram per square meter biaxial fabric. So that means that this type of fabric, you can see it's much thicker than the previous one. And again, I'm cutting little blocks out of it. You can see here, I don't use the typical fiberglass matting at all. And this just shows you the biaxial. What happens here is that you can stretch it. If you stretch it in the wrong direction, it falls apart like I've just shown there. So you need to be pretty careful when you handle this type of material. But as I was saying, I don't use fiberglass matting, the typical basic matting that you would find in a shop, because it's very, very difficult to make it stick around or in corners and around contours. If you use fabric like I'm doing, you don't have that problem at all. Much, much easier to use fabric. If there's any key takeaway that you want to take out of this when you're using fiberglass, don't use the fiberglass matting that you get in basic stores. Look for proper fiberglass material and only use good quality material. So what I'm doing here is I'm just showing you how it's going to be laid up. I'll put a bolt through, put one of the small pieces of fabric, put that washer that I've cut, and then I will insert the thicker fabric over that. So that creates a sandwich between the covering the washer, and the washer will never ever move. I'm just cutting holes in the thicker fabric just to make sure that everything is going to fit nicely. And I'm deciding whether I'm going to put 2 layers of the thick before I put the washer, which I think is far better than just putting the washer over the thin. That's going to make a very, very strong mold. So that's the plan, and that's what we will do when we start fiberglassing this section. What I'll do now is I'll just make some of these cut a hole in them just to prepare them so that I don't have to waste time when I come to doing the fiberglassing. All this pre-work is absolutely essential because you won't have time. Once you start mixing the fiberglass resin, you have to work as fast as you can. So all this is taking time, but it's absolutely necessary to take the time. And here you can see I'm just counting how many holes I have to make, how many pieces of fabric I need, and cutting the little holes. So all be ready and all go very smoothly. When I need to grab a piece that's got a hole in it, I will have them available. Just cleaning up now. Laying some plastic down so that I don't get fiberglass all over the show, because it becomes a very messy process when you get going in the rush to do the fiberglassing. What I'm doing here is I've made another board which I'm going to use to create a flange, which I'll show you. I'll draw a picture of it just now in this video. Right now I'm just working out the internal dimensions of that circle and transcribing that onto that piece of wood that I made, just so that I know exactly where the flange is going to be. You'll see what I mean if you just look at the video. Okay, that goes there, and I just trace it around. And so that will go over there. And I'm now going to just draw the profile so that you can see what I mean, how it's going to look. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to first of all paint on a gel coat. The gel coat is the final surface inside the mold, and it is normally a very hard wearing surface, which is the case in this case because I'm going to be casting concrete in these molds. All of the corners I'm going to make up a paste with resin and a microfiber filler, and I'm going to put the pastes in all of the uh, uh, sharp corners to make it easy for the fabric to go around those contours, and also it makes the mold very strong. So that's the microfiber, and I'll add that to resin to make the paste, and then I will put the paste in the every corner or sharp area just to make those strong and to make sure the fabric can easily go around those contours. This is key to fiberglass, absolutely key. And then all I do is I'm going to then put those small pieces of fiberglass all over the mold, making sure that I have a nice overlap between each one. And because they are small, it's actually going to result in a very strong mold with all of the different overlaps. Okay, so that shows what's going to happen. We're going to end up with a flange in the front. Here I'm just showing you what I'm going to do. What I mean is I'm going to put gel coat everywhere, and I'm going to actually paint the gel coat on the flange portion as well. And I'm not going to attach it to the mold at this point in time because I need to be able to get into this very small areas at the bottom sides. What I'm doing here is I am now making sure the mold is ready for fiberglassing, and I'm basically applying wax. This is ram wax, and I'm applying it with a paintbrush to make sure I get into all of the different little corners. Ram wax is the basic protection to make sure that the fiberglass doesn't stick to anything. But above the wax, I'm also going to be applying a release agent. So you first wax everything as thoroughly as possible. Everywhere, wax everywhere. Everywhere you think resin could go, you add wax all over the show. I think I'm just waiting for the wax to dry, making holes in preparation. And now I'm going to be applying the mold release agent. First, what I do is I've taken all the bolts and the washers, except for those washers that have got those grooves in them. All the bolts I don't want to have the resin stick to, so I am just coating them in the mold release. This is very, very important that you do this, otherwise those bolts are going to be stuck fast and it's going to be extremely difficult to disassemble the segments. So it's absolutely key that the bolts are covered in the release agent. Now the wax is dried by now, and I'm now applying the release agent to everything. And what I'm doing is I'm putting the bolts through the holes, and then I will apply the release agent. The reason why I'm putting the bolts through the holes is because by putting the bolts through the holes, some of the release agent could have been taken off the bolts. So this is just a way to ensure that the bolts have release agent all over them. And of course, the bolts will remain stuck out like this as I go through the process of applying the fiberglass. So here I am just painting everything with the release agent, making sure that all the bolts are showing. And what I'm doing there is I'm just also putting mold release on round uh, washers that I will just use as the final means of preparing the mold for use, which you will see right at the end of the video. What I'm doing here is I'm now just painting everything with the mold release, getting into every single tiny little crack, every surface, make sure that the fiberglass will not stick to anything. This mold release creates a bit of a sticky surface, which is very good for the next process, which is to start doing the fiberglassing. So it helps in applying the fiberglass, especially on vertical surfaces. You might expect a release agent to be like slippery. That's not the case. This is more like a sticky kind of substance. And it's you just need to get any universal mold release that you can get your hands on. They either come like this, where it's in a bottle and you just brush it on, but they also come in spray cans and you can just spray it on. I prefer this because it does apply a thicker surface, and the spray on also, it's recommended that once you sprayed it, you actually take a brush and you brush it in as well to make sure it gets into all of the tiny crevices. Just making more washes up there. You see they just basic round washes that I will use right at the end. Okay, onto the gel coat. Now there are many types of gel coat available. I'm just using a basic one that creates a very hard surface that's difficult to scratch, which is right for cement. When you go onto a website to purchase gel coats, just look at all the different options and choose the one that most suits your application. They generally come like this in a can and then with a hardener. And you just basically pour the hardener into the can, stir it up for a minute, and start painting. And you want to make sure that you get this gel coat into every single little crevice, the corners especially. You want a very nice covering of gel coat all over the section of the mold that's going to be the final exposed mold. So you don't really need the sides. You can see I'm not doing much on the sides at all. I'm just concentrating on where the actual surface of the finished mold. Pushing the gel coat into the corner there, making sure that it gets into all of the crevices and and that I have a good covering of it. Now, some people say you should do two coats of gel coat. I don't think it's necessary at all. One coat is generally fine. because this gel coat is thick in itself and it's not easy to apply. You'll find that it's a difficult uh, product to work with, but and because of that, one coat is absolutely fine. And it doesn't have to be a smooth finish. What matters most is that it over covers the entire surface of the exposed mold, and it doesn't matter if there are some areas where it's thicker than other. It makes no difference. Just make sure that you get it into all of the little crevices. Here you can see I'm extending it just to go over the bolts to just make sure that that part of the mold it remains very strong. You can see the green is going to be the flange and the exposed final mold. The rest is just the part of the supporting structure. It's also a good idea is to have extra of the gel coat available because it sometimes you run out, and if you run out it'll be total disaster. So you must have extra, another batch that you can mix up very quickly if you need to. What I'm doing now is I'm painting some of the gel coats on this board where the flange is going to be. That's why I drew that half circle there to make sure that I knew where to put the gel up to. And because this is just a flange, it's not key that I have a lot of gel coats on it. It's not really necessary to have done this, but I'm just doing it because I have a bit of the gel coat left in the can. Just checking I've got it into all of the corners. This is absolutely crucial that you get it into all of the corners. Okay, what I'm doing here now is I am measuring up the resin, and I will pre-measure a number of bowls of or containers of the resin. I want to get quite a few pre-measured so that I don't have to waste time when time comes to apply the resin and the fabric. I want to have as much of them pre-poured and ready to go. So what I'm doing basically is I am just measuring out the larger amount into uh, containers. And what I've done now is I've just put in the hardener into one of the small container, and I'm now going to just give the coating of the resin over the gel coat. What What people will tell you is that you should allow the gel coat to dry until it becomes tacky, and then you start the fiberglassing process. I don't do that. I apply the gel almost straight after the gel coat, and the reason I do that is because I want to make sure that there can't be any delamination of the gel coat away from the resin layers. So I just quickly painted over the gel coat with resin to make sure that that will happen, that they will stick together very nicely. What I'm doing now is I'm adding the microfiber into the rest of the resin, the small amount of resin that I mixed up. And I just add enough microfiber until I get a nice thick paste. You can see that paintbrush that I used to apply the resin it looks green, and that's because the gel coat was still wet when I applied the resin, which is what I wanted to make sure that the resin and the gel coat are going to stick together and never delaminate. Okay, I've got now a nice thick paste, and I'm basically just going to put that paste in all of the corners, building up a, a contour that's going to make it easy for the fabric to fold around or in corners. This is absolutely crucial as well. If you don't do this, what will happen is if you just had to try put fabric into the corner like without doing this, there will be air bubbles created, and the fabric will have gaps, and you won't get a very good sharp edge of your mold. This is absolutely vital, this step, where you put this paste in all of the corners to uh, make the corners much easier for fabric to go around. It has another advantage in that it makes the mold very, very strong in all of the weak areas, which would be these corners. So using a, a tongue depressor, that's what we basically use in fiberglassing to mix everything in small batches. And it's very useful to be able to do this applying of the paste. It's got a nice rounded end and makes it very easy to just push the paste into the corners. I think I ran out of that small batch, and I've just gone and I've just measured out another one, and just now making up some more of the paste. You can see I use very small batches of resin. I'm using here 200 grams of the resin only, and later on I will change that to 400 grams. So it's small amounts of resin. What I'm doing here is I'm just taking the normal resin and I paint it over where I put the paste, just to smooth out those corners. And now I'm taking the thin fabric, placing it over each one of the bolts, and with the resin I'm just painting the resin around the fabric, on the fabric, to make the fabric adhere to and around the bolts. I'll do the bolts, and then I will do all of the little corners. And while I'm doing this, I'm working as fast as I can with all of the pre-prepared fabric that's been cut, because the clock is ticking now. This resin has got a setting time, and in this case, because I've used slow hardener, I will have about 2 to 3 hours to work, but it's going to take me about an hour and a half to apply all of the pieces of fabric. So if I had used a medium or a fast hardener, I would run out of time. So it's very important that you use a slow hardener here because you don't want any part of the mold to start drying now. So you see I put thin pieces of fabric. Now I'm going on to the thicker pieces of fabric, and I'm also putting some of the remaining paste. I'm just putting it on the edge of the mold there where the flange will be, so that when I put that piece of wood up, I will have the paste there, but I can't do that yet because I need to put in a whole lot of fabric on the bottom edges and corners because I won't be able to get to them when I put that board on. That's the reason why I've left the board off for now until I finish off those bottom areas. There you can see I've just taken one of the cut um, washers and putting them in place. Thick piece of fabric, a washer, and then covering it with another thick piece of fabric. And that's sandwiching the washers into the fiberglass, and there's no way that those washers will ever move because of the cuts that I've made in them. Once I had finished the bottoms sections, I then lifted that portion of that wood and screwed it in, just taping the bottom to make sure that any resin that wants to now escape can have like a little dam to catch it. Just putting some more paste into those areas. Now I'm putting fabric over the flange area, and that is in doing that I'm smoothing down that paste that I put on that board and creating a nice strong corner and a nice flange there. So I keep on doing that until basically I finish the mold, just placing these pieces of fabric all over the place. At this point in time, what happened is my camera overheated and I lost all of this work to finishing it. About 2 hours later, I came and I just inserted these washers over the bolts. And what I'm doing this for is just to make sure that the section around where every bolt goes is nice and flat. So it'll be easy to attach the bolts through the mold pieces. Because this was about 2 hours afterwards, the resin is quite firm at this point in time. So I'm actually taking off that front portion of the mold because at this stage it would be better. I don't want it to sit like that. So I'm just going to take it off and then finish putting in the bolts, because what I had done as I was finishing off the mold, I removed the bolts just to make sure that I could have the bolt holes very consistent. Left it for about 2 hours, and because I'm using slow hardener, I knew I had some time to work with the fiberglass after it had set. It's still malleable at this point in time, and even though I can take this section apart, you'll see that the actual fiberglass and the gel coat still remains in place. There's no sagging or anything like that, and it's one of the advantages of working with slow hardener. is that you can actually do a bit of work on the mold in bending it or finishing it off like I'm doing now, putting in these bolts. You can see there, for instance, when I drilled through, it moved the fabric. Now, when I put the washer there with a nut, it's going to squeeze the fabric back together, um, and it will result in a very nice, perfect mold. So there you go. This is making the front section of the mold. Looks complicated, but if you do it step by step, it's not so difficult. Thank you.